American shoe stores once put children's feet over an X-ray tube so parents could watch their bones glow inside new shoes. It wasn't a medical exam. It was advertised as the responsible way to find the perfect fit. The machine was called a shoe-fitting fluoroscope. Children used it. Parents looked through it. Salespeople demonstrated it. And the strangest part isn't that nobody had heard radiation could be dangerous. Warning signs already existed. The real mystery is how a medical technology became a family shopping attraction, and why seeing the bones made an ordinary purchase feel safer. X-rays stunned the world after Wilhelm Röntgen announced their discovery in 1895. Suddenly, doctors could see inside a living body without surgery. That ability seemed almost magical, but it also looked objective. A shadow on a screen appeared more trustworthy than a person's judgment. By 1919, Boston physician Jacob Lowe had filed a patent for a machine that showed a foot inside a shoe. He demonstrated versions at shoe retail conventions soon afterward, and the patent was granted in 1927. Lowe probably has the strongest claim to the invention, although historians have found competing claims. The machine didn't have one perfectly clean origin story. What it did have was perfect timing. To use it, a customer stepped onto the cabinet and placed both feet into an opening. An X-ray tube sat below. The beam passed upward through the shoes and feet, then struck a fluorescent screen. 3 viewing ports let the child, a parent, and the salesperson look at the image together. Some machines offered different power settings for men, women, and children. Timers could run from about 5 to 45 seconds, with 20 seconds described as a common setting. On the screen, the bones appeared inside the faint outline of the shoes. Wiggle your toes, and your skeleton wiggled too. That was useful theater. But stores presented it as much more than theater. Children were the perfect customers for the pitch. Parents worried about growing feet, and a child couldn't always explain whether a shoe was truly comfortable. Advertisements argued that ordinary fitting depended too much on guesswork. The X-ray machine promised visual proof. Store instructions even recommended placing the machine where it would face the women's and children's departments. Ads claimed it could reveal shoes that were too short, too narrow, or too pointed. One Adrian advertisement promoted the machine as a way to protect a child's future foot health. Another campaign described X-ray fitting as the modern, scientific choice for careful parents. The sales message was simple: a responsible parent didn't buy shoes blindly. A responsible parent looked inside. The glowing image did something a measuring stick couldn't. It turned the salesperson's opinion into a picture. Parents could see the toes. Children got a futuristic experience. And the store gained a machine that competitors might not have. Some models were expensive investments, so retailers had a reason to make the machine visible and memorable. The fluoroscope didn't just inspect the product. It advertised the store every time someone climbed onto it. That helps explain why it spread. Historical estimates suggest roughly 10,000 units were operating in the United States by the early 1950s, with thousands more in Britain and Canada. That number is an estimate, not a census. But the machines were common enough to become a recognizable part of mid-century shoe shopping. The popular version of this story says people simply didn't know X-rays could hurt them. That isn't accurate. Reports of harmful effects appeared within a year of the discovery of X-rays. By the early 20th century, medical workers knew that heavy or repeated exposure could injure skin and other tissue. Professional groups had begun issuing radiation protection guidance years before shoe fluoroscopes became common. But knowing that large exposures were dangerous was not the same as having today's understanding of cumulative risk. Dose measurement was still developing. Safety rules were often voluntary. And guidance written for hospitals did not automatically control a machine operated by a shoe clerk in a department store. The problem wasn't total ignorance. It was a dangerous gap between what specialists were learning and what retailers were allowed to sell as modern service. By the late 1940s, researchers began testing shoe store machines more systematically. The results were inconsistent, and that inconsistency was part of the danger. A Detroit survey found exposure rates at the feet ranging from 16 to 75 roentgens per minute. Other historical measurements suggested that a common 20-second session could deliver between 7 and 14 roentgens to the feet. The Roentgen is an older exposure unit. The important point is that machines that looked nearly identical could produce very different amounts of radiation. One historical review reported that more than 60% of inspected machines exceeded a recommended limit. Researchers also measured stray radiation outside the cabinet. The beam wasn't only a concern for the feet inside it. For an ordinary customer, historians did not find a clear record of immediate injuries caused by a typical store fitting. That matters, because claiming that every child was visibly harmed would be false. The greater documented concern was repeated exposure. Salespeople stood near the machines throughout the workday. Some placed their hands near or inside the beam while pressing a shoe around a customer's foot. Medical reports described chronic skin injury in operators after years of frequent use. Children also drew special concern because their bodies were still developing and because a family might return for new shoes again and again. A 1950 medical paper identified possible interference with bone growth as the principal danger from careless use or uncontrolled dosage. It was a warning about risk, not proof that every scan caused damage. This is where the story usually gets exaggerated. No, there wasn't a fluoroscope in literally every American shoe store. The famous 10,000 figure was an estimate. No, historians have not proved that one normal fitting caused cancer in a particular child. And stories about children using the machine repeatedly just for entertainment are mostly memories and anecdotes, not reliable exposure records. But correcting those exaggerations doesn't make the real story harmless. These were genuine X-ray machines used for a retail task of questionable value. Their output varied. Their operators were not necessarily medical professionals. And at least one survey found that shoe salespeople themselves often regarded the device more as a sales gimmick than a necessary fitting tool. Regulation arrived slowly and unevenly. In 1946, the American Standards Association recommended limits for shoe fluoroscope exposures, including a yearly limit for children. New York adopted similar requirements in 1948. Medical and professional groups issued stronger warnings around the end of the decade, while some jurisdictions required licensed operators. Pennsylvania banned shoe-fitting fluoroscopes in 1957. By around 1960, regulation, professional criticism, and pressure from insurers had largely pushed them out of American stores. Limited use continued longer in parts of Canada and Britain, reportedly into the 1970s. The machine that once proved a store was modern gradually became evidence that the store had failed to modernize. The shoe fluoroscope did not disappear because X-rays stopped looking scientific. It disappeared because science got better at asking a second question. Not just, can this machine show us something? But, is there a good reason to expose someone in order to see it? The fluoroscope solved a visible problem, uncertainty about shoe fit, by creating an invisible one, unnecessary radiation. Its most persuasive feature wasn't the X-ray tube. It was the authority of the image. Once parents saw bones inside the shoe, they felt they were seeing proof. That is the real side effect of this story. Trust moved faster than safety. Sometimes a technology becomes normal not because it has been proven necessary, but because it looks too scientific to question. Subscribe to History's Side Effects for more stories about ordinary ideas with consequences no one expected.